Pleasure to meet you, Ambassador, Mr. Ambassador.
Pleasure to meet you too.
Okay, well, if you don't mind, we'll just start off with a couple of questions.
I'm ready.
Okay, well, with the stuttering of the Doha trade rounds, do you think that cultural diplomacy has a role to play in these international trade negotiations?
That is very hard to say. You know, I was talking yesterday to the Director General of the Foreign Affairs here in Germany. And the faltering of the currencies, he attributes to, what do you call it, to the gambling of those who manage our money, speculation. So you cannot deal with speculation on a country by country basis. We need a composite strategy. But the fluctuation of the dollar, of course, it has a very serious impact on our own currency, on our trends of investment. Because when the dollar becomes weak, our currency becomes strong, and investors don't want to come in. When the dollar becomes strong, and then we have the chance of people coming to utilize our weak currency for investment.
And do you think that maybe a better understanding of these problems on an international scale could produce some results in this respect?
I think the international community understands these things.
Okay.
They try to manage them, but they know exactly why there is a fluctuation, whether it is because of the speculators or because of mismanagement on the part of the nation states, or whether it is corruption on the part of those who invest and derive from the investment. The international community knows that. If you ask the IMF, they will tell you exactly where the solutions could be found. The World Bank will tell you the same thing. The banks of the world, they will tell you where the solutions could come from.
Okay, that's great, yeah, very interesting stuff.
Mr. Ambassador, if I was to move away from cultural diplomacy and the role of that in economics and onto its role in more social policy and social issues, how does cultural diplomacy help South African reconciliation following the apartheid?
Well, it probably has done a lot, but not enough. No. For instance, if you look back to the World Cup, the Rugby World Cup in 1995,
of course.
One of the areas of struggle in South Africa was waged at the cultural front. The boycott of South African teams, the boycott of academia and cultural activists from South Africa. For the first time in 1995, we saw President Mandela wearing the hated Springbok jersey, standing next to the hated white Springbok team, and the whole country applauding this integration of the South Africans on the rugby field. I always say that was a very important window, which unfortunately the South African society did not expand into an open door. We shut it very quickly after the World Cup, and everybody went back to their cocoons. When we won the World Cup in France in 2007, that window was opened up there, and we tried to broaden it up a little bit, take the victorious team throughout the suburbs and the townships, and people were very excited. The World Cup saw millions of people integrated via the World Cup tournament. It is a big weapon, big tool in the hands of reconciliation.
Right,
but it needs sustainability.
Yes, because of course you have players like Brian Habana now who are not from a traditional rugby playing background in South Africa, they're not white. And because of this, is it therefore becoming more attractive across South Africa rather than just in white communities?
Brian Habana is a hero across the color line. Makhenkesi is a hero across the color line. And yes, cultural interaction is a very important tool of social cohesion and racial integration at home and abroad.
Well, I'm afraid that was...
Actually, I have one last question.
Okay.
Your Excellency, I would like to ask, how has the South African government moved to reintegrate members of the 32nd Battalion back into South African society?
Most of the Battalion 32 members were integrated in the South African National Defence Force, but others refused. and they preferred to have an establishment in the Northern Cape, which is where they still are today, as civilians.
Because a lot of them were involved in executive outcomes.
Of course, they were involved in the executive outcomes in South Africa, Angola, and elsewhere. They are still involved as mercenaries in the coups of different countries of Africa.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to bring it to an end.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. That was brilliant.